We're just preparing to go live. I think we are live now. Fabulous. For those of you who are watching, we've just gone live. Make sure to like, leave a comment, say hi so that we know you're there. Always love to know who is online. So please do say hi. So hello and welcome. Today I have a fabulous guest and I am enjoying her book so much and I can't wait to introduce her to you. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Serena in the Joyful Business Group. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. So Rachel Service is CEO of Happiness Concierge, and she has also written a book called There Has to Be More, The Essential Guide to Personal Growth. And she has quite an interesting story. So maybe let's start at the beginning. So Beyonce.
What can't Beyonce do, Serena? You know, wonder how many other entrepreneurs have felt the inspiration from Beyonce. Yeah, so I started Happiness Concierge after experiencing an aha moment where I went to a Beyonce concert and I cried through the whole thing. Something that used to give me so much joy didn't. And I wasn't okay with that. I couldn't
So
get my head around that.
how did you manage to cry all the way through this concert? And I gather she wasn't playing in Australia either. So it was quite a bit of effort to get there too.
It was. So I was working, I think, 3 days a week in an advertising agency. I was freelancing on the side. I think I had another job on the side of that. And I'd gone through a breakup. I was here in Melbourne, Australia, where we're chatting from today. And I was feeling kind of flat, kind of dull. I'd finished a project and I thought, I know what will pep me up. I'll just go to this, Googled, where's Beyonce playing? She was playing in New York, in Brooklyn, New York, as one does. And I thought, well, stuff it. And I took all my savings, I think, all I had, and I bought a return ticket to New York, stayed in a Airbnb, which you could technically call somewhere to stay, but it was a bit, on a budget. Yeah, well, I've got to save my money to get to the gig. I think tickets are about $250. Bought a ticket to her show and then went to her show. And I thought, oh, it's all good. Like, that's something to look forward to. And then when I got to her show, I just found myself walking into the stadium crying and in the toilet beforehand crying. And then the opening act was there and I was crying. And then Beyonce was singing, oh. And you look around Brooklyn Stadium and there's like thousands of people doing this. And I'm going,
not like this kind reaction.
It's not like this beautiful, thoughtful aha moment. It's just like, that feeling when you're kind of just releasing, you're releasing everything, or you stop, or your adrenaline has a chance to catch up with you. And in that moment, I thought, this isn't it. And I was actually on the subway back to Chinatown, where I was staying, from Brooklyn to Chinatown. And everyone around me had that post-event energy and singing. And I had my merchandise and my poster and my t-shirt on, and I saw my reflection in the subway window and I thought, oh, that's not someone who's joyful, to use your word there, Serena. I think I'm the problem. There has to be more than this. I don't know how, but I'm not okay continuing a life where I cannot enjoy a Beyonce concert. That was my internal check-in with myself. So that was a real aha and turning point for me. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And I just want to pick up on the joyful word and say that I don't think it's actually possible for everyone to be happy all the time. Like, I think this is, normal, but like often what happens is we don't acknowledge how we're feeling. We force ourselves to be a certain way, or we think there's something wrong with us rather than connecting and going, yeah, what is actually happening here?
And I don't know if you or any of your community or group can relate to the idea of when you're serving a client, if you work for yourself, or whether you're supporting a colleague, if you work for an organization, the sense of being on, and this was before we're online all the time, the sense of being on and supporting and having answers. And if we're in this group, we're obviously entrepreneurially minded and solution oriented and have some form of belief that I can do this. Like, I can pull off something different to what I see. And so I think the idea of the Beyonce concert, where I'd gone through a breakup, I hadn't stopped, I just worked through it. And then all of a sudden I was left with something I enjoy. I didn't need to be on for a client or for a friend or anything like that. I didn't need to work. And then when I was left with that, I thought, oh, I've actually got nothing left in my tank. I had to go to the opposite side of the world to admit that to myself thousands of dollars later. Came back broke with an aha moment. Thanks very much. This cost me an arm and a leg.
You've got an aha moment though, and you've got the merchandise.
which I've still got the brochure here just to remind me of that moment, right?
And so what happened then? So you're on the subway, you're in tears, heading back to your dodgy Airbnb in Chinatown. So what's happening next in your life? What changed?
Well, I came back to Melbourne and I went through my cupboard, and I've got all these notepads of when I've been to therapy to support myself through depression and burnout and anxiety in the past to kind of understand it. And I was flicking through these notepads and I thought, I don't know what any of this is. So I've obviously written down the notes and gone, oh yes, in session, but I hadn't like done anything with the tools. So, oh yes, oh yes. And so I thought, okay, I need to create my own tools. If I make a decision that I would like to change, I've changed. I know that I can change. Let's figure this out. And so I started to write down on a notepad, and I, just asked, what do I want? And I wrote down a column. How do I want to feel? What would I like to have? What would I like to achieve? And I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And I was living in a share house at the time. And I wrote through 6 pages of I want lists, through the shoulds, through the coulds, through the woulds. And I wrote down, oh, I'd love to be a motivational speaker. And when I wrote that down, I thought, oh, I hope no one sees that. It was too real. But, I'm doing what we're doing now is a very joyful place for me. So I did that, and I started to share it on medium.com. I asked my friend, how do I make a blog? And she said, oh, I think medium.com's free. I said, great, signed up for that. So I'm not making any money. Yeah. And so I did that. And then I didn't realize that connected with Twitter. Someone in my Twitter network or Twitter sphere of 17 followers probably said, hey, that blog post you did around burnout was really helpful. Thanks for sharing. And I thought, and I started a glimmer of joy, I had in my heart. One person found something I did useful. That's a feeling I want to have more of. So I write down that joyful glimmer feels good. So I started to share these tools, and eventually a friend said, you should do a talk about this. And I thought, oh, who wants to hear about crying at Beyonce? And she said, I think a few more people than you think might be able to relate to the feeling of burning out. I went, okay, I'll give it a go. Good practice and all that. So I did this talk. I think there are about 10 people in the audience, and made my sister come along to make the audience look fuller. And then somebody at that venue said, oh, have you got workshops on this? And I'm the daughter of a teacher and a salesman. And I went, yep.
Sure.
I have. That's what I have. And they said, great, let's book you in. I said, great. So I went home, how to create a workshop on Google. That was free too. So I did that. And, I had years in public relations and pitching ideas and writing stories for CEOs and all sorts of people. So I was confident presenting and getting a concept together. So I shared these tools. These are tools I created in my bedroom and are online. I printed off the worksheets, took them along. And at the end of that session, somebody said, oh, here's my card. I work at such and such bank. Can you send me your corporate rates? And I went, yeah. So I texted a member of my family and said, what does corporate rate mean? Because I just hadn't heard that phrase before. I just had no idea. And I said, is that like $50 an hour? Is that kind of what I'm hearing? And they rang and said, don't do anything. Don't do anything next. Here's what that means. And help me just understand this world of budget and organizations and what they were helping me understand what I've been asked to do. And so I started with that bank, and then they told someone who told someone, and that was 6 years ago. So through that, and I was working on the side about that, part-time jobs, working in cafes, finding my way, figuring out how to send an invoice. I think I was using Canva at one point to send invoices. I just had no idea. And now, we've got a team and having fun along the way. So that's a very sped up version of the entrepreneurial journey. But it started very organically. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your entrepreneurial journey. And it's different for everyone, but the key part is that you had to go. You didn't wait for everything to be perfect.
It's so interesting. A lot of the people we connect with, come to me with the idea, I've got this idea and I want to launch this and I want everything to be perfect. The website, the logo, the positioning. And while I think that's great, that's awesome, there's nothing can teach you more than doing a little bit of what you do, getting some feedback from a client, or in my case, friends. I want to practice these one-on-one sessions with these tools. Can you tell me if they're any good? Oh, they're quite helpful. Okay. Right. Edit accordingly, look at feedback forms, update. I was working for free for probably a year and a half while I'm doing my freelancing and part-time jobs, just to figure out, what is it that I'm doing? B, is it valuable? Is it useful? And C, getting some case studies. And once I had those case studies, I was able to go to workplaces and say, hey, here's a before and after, or here's some feedback I've got. People are finding it useful, and my own confidence going, okay, other people feel this way too. Okay, this is worth doing. And I think I made a decision to myself, I'm going to create my own version of success. For me, if one person in every room, whether it's 5 people or 500 online now, if one person goes, that resonates with me, or oh, that might be useful, or oh, I might think about that, then that's success to me. And so whether it's how am I going to pay the bills this month, or whether it's right, let's understand what insurance is. Can't wait to learn about that. You know, it's about, well, one person finds this useful. They
I
will
love
just
talking
keep
about
going.
insurances.
Do you? Wow, we
only...
should. It's like playing to strengths, right? I've had to teach myself things that do not come naturally. So where was Serena 6 years ago? That's what I want to know.
But, you know, we're talking here about success, and obviously this session today is about talking about success. And it sounds like you have reframed in yourself what success means to you. What do you do when you work with your clients to help them come to this sort of aha moment about what success means for them?
Well, the first thing we do is we do an exercise where we break up with expectations. And it sounds daunting, but it's quite freeing. It's the idea of saying, what does success look like where I come from or how I grew up? What does success look like to the people around me? Now, here's a bit of a real question. What does success look like to me? Is it the same, or is it a little bit individual? And what I've come to learn thousands of people later, that everyone has their own beautiful version. So for me, I'm here in the background. I've got my dog. Is he asleep? I don't know if you can see that. He's asleep on his back.
Oh,
With
his leaf up.
Very asleep. You know, I'm here with my dog and my spouse, and my version of success is spending time with you, Serena, to just chat through these ideas. Now, for people in, let's see, my brother, he's traveling Europe at the moment. His version of success is he works at the government here in Melbourne, and he's also a musician and also works at the local arts centre. So his version of success is a portfolio base, right? And then other friends of mine, they've got corporate jobs, 9 to 5 or 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And they do that so they can save it for a house. They have great, eventually, interstate, international holidays. And that's success to them. There's no wrong way to do it. So I think by breaking up with expectation, we can then say, okay, well, what does success look like? And okay, if we don't know, well, based on that, what do I want? How do I want to feel? And if feeling is good, then we use those feeling words. If we're thinking more material, what do I want to have? Maybe that's security. Maybe that's a feeling of fairness. Maybe that's feeling of clarity. That's great. And if I want to achieve something, maybe I want to write a book, but maybe my achievement in life is feeling good about what I'm doing every day. It can be as simple or as complex as that. And so we step through that. And then at Happiness Concierge, we support workplaces. So that's doing these exercises in a workplace setting, which is to say, we're here for a reason and your boss is paying me. So let's not be too altruistic, right? But like, what's within our control, right? What we can control, what we can't. What's our version of success? Great. What's work's version of success? How do we bring these gaps together? And here's a speed bump, a miscommunication. Oh, here's a speed bump, there's a misalignment. Oh, here's a speed bump, silos between organizations. That's cool, that's life. How do we limit those gaps so we can have fun at work, or if fun's a stretch, get on at work? And if getting on at work's a stretch, at least get our job done, right? That's the kind of stuff I'm interested in, because, you know, my belief is that Australia, or evidence has shown, Australia is a rich country, but it's got a long way to go in terms of workplace cultures which are functional, efficient, and actually contribute to, you know, sharing the funds to support some of our societal, economic and political challenges. We have a huge opportunity. We have a lot of wealth in Australia. I really feel that we could be working differently, and I've seen the evidence of that. So as an example, we worked with a team recently and we taught them how to give feedback to each other, and that saved them $30,000 in efficiency and miscommunication a year, because they're having less meetings and they're being more direct with each other. Like that's a tangible outcome, right? What organization wouldn't want that? And that only happened in about 6 months. Takes time though, but it's good fun.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And workplace culture is just so important. And, you know, when a team is not functioning, and I think traditional hierarchical teams don't encourage good communication necessarily.
Sounds as though you've got some great experience up your sleeve there, Serena.
Well, maybe. And so I was just kind of laughing, about, this concept of making workplace is fun. And I guess the challenge too is for a number of women on here who are entrepreneurs who are creating their own businesses. At this stage, many of them may be solopreneurs. Some may have staff already or looking to have more. How then did you take some of these concepts about success, both for yourself, but also for your team as you're building it?
I think that's a beautiful question. And I think I've certainly experienced a mindset shift from this is a hobby because I have a part-time job to this could be something. And I'm stretching my capacity between I've got freelance clients, I've got a part-time job paying the bills, and then I've got all this demand. Something has to give. And I can either choose to leave it as a hobby or I can choose to make it a thing. And for me, my vision of success is I would love to be doing this full time. So I personally, made the jump to do that, even when the net appearing before me wasn't clear that it would be a sure thing, right? So to support myself to do that, I worked in a cafe on the weekends to balance happiness concierge as it grew, because my vision of success is that when anyone had an experience with me and eventually my team, that they would feel valued, validated, heard, and that they thought, that was worth spending half an hour with Rach on that. Oh, that was worth thinking about. So I want it to be quality. And I never wanted to compromise the quality because I didn't have enough time to make it good. I never wanted that to be, I'm a perfectionist. I didn't want that to be an experience. So what I did was I was on my way to my fourth burnout where I thought 3 burnouts sounds cool, but 4 burnouts as the happiness concierge, that's a little off brand for me. It's kind of the antithesis of my message. So I put out the call for happiness concierges because my core belief is that everyone's a happiness concierge of their life. Everyone knows what success looks like to them. Sometimes it's just about taking time to go, right, what do I do and what changes do I need to make or not? And so I put out a call and 150 people applied. 30 were shortlisted, 15 were invited to boot camp, 8 made it, and 3 made the job offer. So then we trained them up over 6 months, 9 months, a year in Sydney, Canberra, Brisbane, and Melbourne. And then I went out again the next year for more. And then all of a sudden I had 8 trainers across Australia and 1 Rachel, like to say my cup was full. Like it was many things. So I brought in an operations manager and then she expanded and she needed a project manager. And all of a sudden I've got these employees, right? And I'm like, it's a lot of responsibility, And then boink, COVID. And then the business grew from there. So the journey from the journey for me was hobby to this could be a real thing. This could be a real thing to, all right, let's set up and get money in the door. Let's get some other money on the weekends. Doesn't really matter what it is, just to pay the bills. And then that became too much. Then I grew a team. But at every instance, I hired people before I was ready mentally. And I think before the bank account was ready too, because I just knew there was demand. And I'm a big believer in if you tell the world consistently what you're about, people will find a way to you. It's a lot of work, but for me, it doesn't feel so much as work. It feels more like an alignment with who I am. So I'm not thinking I have to go to work today. I'm thinking, okay, great. What are we doing today? Or what problem are we solving? That's my brain. And, that's how the book came out. I had a bit of time up my sleeve. So I did that too.
Well, I can just see when you talk just how alive you are about this. So it's definitely, you are switched on, Rachel, when you're talking about it. It's definitely is aligned with your values. You can see that just so clearly.
That's a good feeling.
Yes. And so one thing I just want to go back on, which was something we were talking about actually before we came online. And this is this, balancing, work to bring the money in as you build up your career. So in my case, we were talking before, back in 2019, nearly 2 years ago, I quit. But this year I've actually been back at my old job for a little bit. And it's just been interesting to observe. But, the reality is that sometimes we do dip in and dip out. And as I was mentioning to you before, one of the things that really resonated for me in your book was, a story that you had about a particular entrepreneur who kept going back. Like she was ready to take the plunge, but then she got a good old job offer and that was looking good for a while, but then it sort of got a bit sour and stale. And so she quit, but then she found another good job offer. So a long kind of question, but maybe can we talk a little bit about this balancing the security of work with our entrepreneurial path?
I can so relate to that eventual entrepreneur / corporate escapee, I think it's called in the book. I can so relate to that because myself, I wouldn't be able to count the amount of nights I'm waking up at 4 a.m. along the ride, which is like, how will I pay for this, or how will I solve that problem? It's both one's relationship with risk. I'm comfortable with risk. Figure it out, kind of got a mad high off it, I think. But then it's also balancing that with stability, right? Our craving to feel secure financially and otherwise. It's a real balancing act. It's like, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to do this thing, and I'm like, yep, give myself a pep talk, and then I'm waking up in the middle of the night being like, but how will you pay that? And I remember, just a few years ago, I was going to Sydney, I think, and I think I had to map out every single dollar for every single day and what I'd had for lunch and what coffee, so I could afford to get on the plane back. So it's one of those things where that takes up your cognitive load, and that takes up brain space away from what you're there to do, which is add value, right? It's really interesting. But in terms of the balancing act, I have kept those relationships alive with people I freelance with. And while I was building Happiness Concierge, we definitely had a shift when COVID happened. It was just explosion of demand, but from workplaces. But prior to that, I'd often do freelancing gigs on the weekend, because you never know when you need that free money. As an example, I batched a couple of tax returns a few years ago, and then the tax bill was astronomical. And I thought, well, I'm so glad that I, like a squirrel, put away all that money for a rainy day. Here's a rainy day. Great. But to answer your question, balancing that need for the corporate life or any paid job with your own venture, just know that every entrepreneur, whether I'm working full-time in the business, you're always balancing, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do that? No matter how busy or, booked you are. I think what changes is your relationship to your response to that fear, and reminding yourself what you do know for sure. Can you put things in place such as a get out of jail free fund, savings over there, and of course your personal salary or whatever's left over, if that's how it's going. For me, at Happiness Concierge, I'm on an extremely modest salary so that every dollar can go back into the business. So yeah, maybe I'll see a financial payoff in the longer end, but for now, it's extremely modest spending. So, the setup here and the lighting and the nice camera, that's coming out of my back pocket, but I'm still eating tuna and rice for lunch, So it's a
Nothing
growing
wrong with tuna and rice.
right. Yeah. Diet of champions. So I think when we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs online and see that commentary online, it looks like, A, they got it all figured out, and B, that there's money coming out of the wazoo. Well, maybe, but all that money has to go somewhere in terms of growing your business or you enjoying your lifestyle. You get to make that choice. You might do it as a lifestyle business. I think what many entrepreneurs forget is to have a lifestyle business, there's 80% additional work you need to do to have that 3-day-a-week job. It's all the admin and all the stuff around the sides that allows you to show up for those 3 days. So it's really important just to align what you're doing. Maybe you might call it your why. You might call it also, what success looks like to you. That probably resonates with me. So some thoughts on that. Yeah. What do you think, Serena?
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack as well, but I can certainly relate, like we were talking about, and having left a public service career, I certainly didn't fall in a heap, but I had set up a number of things. I had a book, I had some freelance clients, and then of course we had COVID hit, and anyone doing anything creative, it kind of went so it was really difficult. Like, I'm honest about that. Like, I had a lot of doubts about had I made the right decision. I was in a good financial situation, because I blog about personal finance. There'd be a problem if I wasn't. But even so, I was like, well, I could have been on a nice, secure wicket. I had one of the best superannuation schemes in Australia. Like, it was very safe. But now that I'm back there, like I've sort of pretty much been forced to make a decision a couple of weeks ago about, did I sort of go back? Like, that door was open, should I want to? But in order for that to happen, I would have really had to close the door on my other dreams. And, it was prompted particularly by my bigger boss having a conversation about my intentions. And I don't blame him from that. Like, it was a fair conversation, but, I really had to make a call, and I just went, well, I'll give 4 weeks notice and that's it. So yeah, I think there comes a point where the balancing of the corporate act with your other things, it just becomes hard. Like, even though I feel that I'm efficient and effective and good at project management, like, the messages about what you're doing becomes very confused to other people.
And I think that's the beautiful nuance there, Serena, which is when you might work 3 days a week or part-time or consult too. 60% is perception management, and I'm doing my job management, and the handing over between that, because other people will say I'm 4 or 5 days a week. It very rarely is it around the productivity or output. And so if we think about the energy you want to put into your entrepreneurial venture, it's all imagination, right? You're creating something that doesn't
Yeah.
exist. It's all creativity, and all that headspace gets clogged up, and all that managing perceptions. I'm doing a good job. I hope you know what I'm doing. This isn't what I want to do, but it's paying the bills. All that noise. And some people can compartmentalize really well. But I think we need to ask, we'll never get maximum returns for minimum effort, but we'll always get maximum returns, financial or creatively, up to us, for maximum effort. So we need to make a decision on when to back ourselves and what that looks like. And I'm a big believer in safe steps of action that align with your risk profile. So a safe step might be 3 days a week. For me, safety is no days a week, because I shine when there's there's no clear path. I'm a happy as. But for people in my network, going down to 2 days, they can do that really well, and then shine elsewhere. Other friends of mine, for me, when I was starting out Happiness Concierge, I could only work at a cafe because I didn't have any brain left other than flat white or hot chocolate. I had no brain space for anything involving anything, because I was solving problems all the time. Like, how am I going to pay the bills? What is the answer to that? What is a corporate rate? All those big questions. I couldn't take that to another professional job because my brain and my heart wasn't in it, but my brain couldn't actually cope. I couldn't recover or rejuvenate. So
that's a very good point, actually, and it's something that I struggle with at the moment, having a sort of high pressure public service job 3 days a week with my entrepreneurial stuff the other 2 days of the week plus the weekend. So by the time I do housework and stuff, it's virtually 3 days with one, 3 days with the other, because although I do compartmentalize, you're still really on. Like, news articles that are relevant to your work will come up during that time you're not at work. Sometimes deadlines do fall on the days that you're not there. So I had to log in on Monday for a bit. And of course, it's really hard just to do that. You tend to check other emails, you do stuff. But you are very much in that brain space. And that particular brain space, by the way, too, is a very risk averse, very cautious brain space, which it has to be, right? So public service has to be very considered, it has to be very responsive, but it's also a very, very risk adverse, cautious environment. But entrepreneurship, by its nature, is all about taking risks and trying to do new things. So I actually, from my days that I'm working, at the end of the day, I'm actually exhausted, to be honest, because it's really hard then to go from having been really cautious, seeking lots of approvals, consulting a lot, to suddenly going, let's try something really new that might fail.
exactly, right. And it's the idea of lane switching or context switching, which is where our energy levels fade. And if we're wanting to give our entrepreneurial venture the best chance of succeeding, we want to give it the best us. And sometimes it often gets the leftover us, because when are we going to rest on the weekend, right? As you beautifully said. And it's also the idea of, I think corporate Australia is very enamored with the idea of security, right? And who isn't? But it's the idea that there will be a smaller amount of money over a longer period of time. And, I remember saying to a friend, they're looking at taking paternity leave. And they said, well, I have to stay with this job because I've got this great 6-month leave option with my organization. I said, that's amazing. How much? So I can't leave. And I said, well, how much is 6 months salary? And she said, X amount of dollars. I was like, great. How long would it take to get that month in your bank account? She goes, oh, well, I've got this, I've got that. I could combine that, save a bit there. And I said, well, if having that amount of money in your bank account is the same, and you're planning to leave, if you are, you might not be afterwards, if we're talking about the same outcome, the same amount of money in my bank, or is it the idea of paying yourself, because you could put that in a savings account and pay yourself a couple of $100 every week to get the high of a salary if you really want? And she went, well, options, and she decides what's right for her. But if we know we're going to leave, chances are everyone knows that too. So how can we get on with saving the cash we need to feel a certain way, or have that security, or pay for 6 months or a year or 3 months, up to you. For me, I think I had $300 in my savings account and I just did it. Where am I going with this? Yeah, we can chop it up in as many ways as feels comfortable to us.
Yeah, no, thank you. This is a really great point. And, with my frugalista hat on, I would say too, definitely if you're planning to go and be an entrepreneur, save up first, have an emergency contingency fund, because while some people strike it rich straight away, many people will have roadblocks, and you want to make sure that you have that financial resilience there that's going to help tide you over. And yes, if you think you're going to leave, you're right. People will energetically around you, they will know that you're no longer as super keen. It has a way of coming out. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for being my guest on the Joyful Business Club. I will share a YouTube of this soon, and please feel free to drop into the group. And we would love also to see your TEDx talk in your pink suit. So please make sure to share that as well.
You don't have to ask me twice. It sounds amazing. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.